The silver light of dawn crept through the blinds of Elena Voss's modest apartment in Geneva. She stood at the window, watching the sun rise over Lake Geneva, casting golden ripples across the water. Her first day at the Hematrix Institute loomed ahead, promising a new chapter in her career as a biochemist specializing in novel isotopes. Elena ran her fingers through her short, dark hair, feeling a mixture of anticipation and trepidation. The Hematrix Institute's reputation preceded it: cutting-edge research, unlimited funding, and a level of secrecy that both intrigued and concerned her. Their recruitment pitch had been impossible to resist. Join us in discovering elements that will revolutionize energy production for a world desperate for solutions. After 3 cups of coffee and a hurried shower, Elena found herself standing before the Institute's imposing glass and steel structure on the outskirts of Geneva. The building seemed to pulse with potential, its reflective exterior capturing the morning light in prismatic patterns. Dr. Voss, a tall man with a crisp lab coat and military posture, approached her at the reception desk. "Victor Selden, Executive Director. We've been eagerly awaiting your arrival." His handshake was firm, almost aggressive. Elena immediately sensed the intensity that drove the man. Ambition practically radiated from him. "Thank you for the opportunity, Director Selden." Elena replied, matching his grip. "I'm eager to begin." "Excellent. We don't waste time here." Selden guided her through a labyrinth of security checkpoints, each more stringent than the last. Retinal scans, fingerprint verification, voice recognition. The Institute took its security seriously. They finally arrived at a sterile white laboratory that stretched the length of a football field. Equipment worth millions lined the walls: mass spectrometers, electron microscopes, centrifuges of every size, and machines Elena couldn't even identify. "This will be your primary workspace," Selden explained, gesturing expansively. "You'll be heading our isotope identification division, with a specific focus on Project Phaeton." "Project Phaeton?" Elena raised an eyebrow. "I wasn't briefed on this." Selden's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Need-to-know basis, Dr. Voss. And now you need to know." He lowered his voice. "We believe we've discovered trace evidence of an element that exists outside the standard model of physics, an element that could revolutionize energy production as we know it." Elena felt a surge of scientific curiosity. Outside the standard model? That's impossible? So was nuclear fission once. Selden handed her a tablet. "These are the preliminary readings. We need you to help us isolate and stabilize it." Elena scrolled through the data, her excitement giving way to confusion. "These readings, they're from biological samples, human samples." "Correct." Selden nodded. "Originally detected during a routine screening of volunteers for a dietary study. An anomaly in the spectral analysis that no one could explain." Elena's brow furrowed as she studied the charts. "This peak here, it suggests an isotope destabilizing at the subatomic level. That kind of energy signature shouldn't be possible in organic tissue. And yet, there it is." Selden's voice carried a note of triumph. "Humanity carries within it the most powerful element in the universe. Your job is to find out why, and how we can harness it." As Elena continued to examine the data, a chill ran down her spine. If these readings were accurate, they were looking at something unprecedented, an element so unstable it should tear apart any living tissue containing it. Yet, somehow, it existed in trace amounts within human blood. "I'll need a team," Elena said, already calculating the resources required. "You'll have whatever you need," Selden assured her. "Just remember our primary objective: energy production." The potential applications are limitless. Something in his tone made Elena glance up sharply. There was a hunger in Selden's eyes that transcended scientific curiosity, something closer to avarice. Of course, she replied cautiously. Energy production. Later that afternoon, Elena found herself in the Institute's vast medical wing, observing as technicians processed blood samples from volunteers. The procedure was standard, but the purpose was anything but. "We screen hundreds of samples weekly," explained a technician named Moira, "looking for the isotope signature. Most show nothing, but occasionally, as if on cue, a machine at the far end of the lab emitted a soft alert. The technician monitoring it stiffened, then called out, 'Director Selden, we have another positive.' Selden materialized so quickly that Elena wondered if he'd been lurking nearby all along. He strode to the monitoring station, examining the readouts with naked excitement. "Excellent. Prepare it for full spectrum analysis." He turned to Elena. "Your first case study, Dr. Voss." Elena approached the workstation, studying the readings with growing fascination. The signature was unmistakable, a spectral peak that corresponded to no known element, fluctuating with a pattern that suggested extreme instability at the quantum level. "Whose sample is this?" she asked. The technician consulted his tablet. "Volunteer 337. Aaron Monroe, age 32, no significant medical history." "I want to meet him," Elena said decisively. Selden frowned. "That's not protocol." "It is now," Elena interrupted. "If we're studying an element found in human blood, I need to understand the human factor, medical histories, psychological profiles, environmental factors, everything." For a moment, tension crackled between them. Then Selden nodded curtly. "Arrange it," he instructed the technician. "But remember, Dr. Voss, our focus is the element, not the carrier." As the day progressed, Elena was introduced to more members of the Hematrix team. Among them was Dr. Malik Patel, a hematologist whose gentle demeanor contrasted sharply with the Institute's clinical atmosphere. "So you're the new isotope hunter?" Patel greeted her with a warm smile. "Hoping to revolutionize energy production with mysterious elements from our blood." There was a hint of skepticism in his voice that Elena found refreshing after Selden's intensity. "Something like that," she replied. "Though I admit, the premise sounds more like science fiction than biochemistry." Patel nodded. "The line between the two gets thinner every year. But I must warn you, Selden has very specific expectations for Project Phaeton. Energy production." Elena nodded. "That's the public objective." Patel said quietly, "Just remember there are always multiple agendas at play in institutions like this." Before Elena could press him further, they were interrupted by the arrival of a woman whose presence seemed to electrify the air around her. She moved with confidence, her lab coat unbuttoned over jeans and a t-shirt that read, "Quantum Mechanics. The dream stuff is made of." "You must be Dr. Voss," the woman said, extending her hand. "Ariella Navarro. I head the quantum physics division, which makes me the person who keeps telling Selden why his demands violate the laws of physics." Elena immediately liked her. "Pleasure to meet you. I suspect I'll be joining that chorus soon enough." Ariella laughed. "I read your paper on isotopic transmutation in extreme environments. Brilliant work. I think we're going to get along famously, especially when we start disappointing Selden together." As the day came to a close, Elena retreated to her assigned office to review the mountain of data she'd been provided. Hours passed as she immersed herself in the mysteries of Project Phaeton, losing track of time until a soft knock at her door jolted her back to reality. "Still here?" It was Malik Patel, holding 2 cups of coffee. I thought you might need this. First days are always overwhelming. Elena accepted the coffee gratefully. Thanks. I'm just trying to make sense of all this. The isotope signatures are like nothing I've ever seen. May I? Patel gestured to her screen. When she nodded, he studied the data with a thoughtful expression. Interesting. The isotope seems to be concentrated in the hemoglobin, but only under certain conditions. Stress conditions, Elena confirmed. Physical or emotional stress seems to trigger increased production. But that's impossible. Elements don't just appear because someone's having a bad day. Unless… Patel hesitated. Unless what? Unless the element isn't being produced. What if it's being transformed? What if something in human biochemistry, when under stress, can actually transmute existing elements into this new isotope? Elena stared at him. That would defy everything we know about nuclear physics. Wouldn't be the first time human biology surprised us. Patel replied with a shrug. I've seen patients recover from conditions that should have been fatal, witnessed immune responses that defied medical explanation. The human body is still the greatest mystery in science. Their conversation was interrupted by Elena's computer chiming with an incoming message. It was from Selden. Blood sample analysis complete. Isotope concentration in your sample, 0.037 ppm. Report to medical wing immediately. Elena frowned. My sample? I never gave a… Then she remembered the standard medical examination she'd undergone as part of her onboarding process. They'd taken blood samples for baseline health metrics. Patel read the message over her shoulder. Congratulations, he said, his voice laced with concern. You're now a test subject in your own experiment. The medical wing was eerily quiet when Elena arrived, most of the staff having departed for the evening. Only Selden remained, studying a holographic display of molecular structures that rotated slowly in the air before him. Ah, Dr. Voss. Right on time. He gestured to the display. Your blood. Quite remarkable. Elena stared at the hologram, recognizing the distinctive structure of her own hemoglobin with one significant anomaly. A cluster of molecules that shouldn't exist, bound to the iron in her red blood cells. This is impossible, she whispered. And yet, there it is. Selden's voice held a note of triumph. You carry it too, a higher concentration than most. Actually, which makes you not just our lead researcher, but our most valuable test subject. Elena felt a chill that had nothing to do with the lab's temperature. I didn't consent to be a test subject. Your employment contract included consent for all medical procedures necessary to the advancement of Institute research. Selden countered smoothly. Don't worry, we'll be monitoring you closely. For what? We don't even know what this element does. That's precisely what we aim to find out. Selden shut down the hologram with a wave of his hand. Starting tomorrow, you'll undergo daily blood draws and physiological assessments alongside your research duties. And if I refuse? Selden's smile hardened. Then you breach your contract and forfeit all rights to your research. Plus, I imagine you're as curious as I am about what's floating around in your bloodstream. Aren't you, Dr. Voss? Elena said nothing, but her silence was answer enough. Scientific curiosity had always been her driving force, and now that curiosity was personal, I thought so, Selden said. Get some rest. Doctor, tomorrow, we begin in earnest. As Elena left the institute that night, she couldn't shake the feeling that she'd stepped into something far more complex and potentially dangerous than a mere research position. The element in her blood was an unknown factor, a wild card that defied conventional science, and Victor Selden's interest in it seemed to extend far beyond energy production. 6 weeks later, Elena stood in her private lab, surrounded by the team she'd assembled. Malik Patel sat at a workstation, analyzing blood samples from the growing pool of volunteers who had tested positive for the mysterious element. Ariella Navarro paced the room, muttering quantum equations under her breath as she tried to model the element's bizarre behavior at the subatomic level. "It doesn't make sense," Ariella declared for the third time that hour. According to every law of physics, this isotope should be so unstable that it would decay instantaneously. It shouldn't be able to exist in nature at all, let alone in living tissue. And yet, here it is, Elena replied, gesturing to the containment chamber where they'd managed to isolate a minuscule amount of the element from blood samples. The silvery substance pulsed with an inner light, as if breathing. "We're calling it Phaeton 1 after the project name." Elena continued, "Named for the son of Helios, who couldn't control the sun's chariot. A fitting name for an element that seemed to constantly teeter on the edge of catastrophic energy release." "Appropriate," Malik commented dryly, "though I'm not sure I like the implications for those of us trying to control it." Elena had come to rely heavily on Malik and Ariella over the past weeks. They formed a perfect triad of expertise, Elena with her knowledge of biochemistry and isotopes, Malik with his deep understanding of human hematology, and Ariella with her quantum physics brilliance. Together, they were piecing together a picture of the most extraordinary discovery in modern science. And the picture was becoming increasingly troubling. "Look at this," Malik called, beckoning Elena to his workstation. "I've been comparing baseline readings from all 37 positive volunteers. There's a pattern emerging." Elena leaned over his shoulder, studying the charts. "Stress response correlation?" "Beyond correlation, it's causation," Malik insisted. "The element appears in the bloodstream during fight or flight responses, then gradually dissipates during periods of calm. It's almost as if the human body is producing it as a survival mechanism." Elena finished his thought. Ariella joined them, frowning at the data. "That's biologically impossible. Elements don't just get created out of nowhere." "What if they're not being created?" Elena proposed. Excitement building. "What if they're being transformed? What if, under extreme stress, human biochemistry is capable of transmuting existing elements into Phaeton 1? "Biological alchemy," Ariella scoffed. "That's no more impossible than what we're already seeing," Malik pointed out. "Look at Volunteer 337, Aaron Monroe. His levels spike dramatically when he's subjected to simulated danger scenarios." Elena had indeed been monitoring Aaron closely. The young man had become their primary test subject, willingly participating in increasingly elaborate experiments designed to trigger the production of Phaeton 1 in his bloodstream. "We need to run a controlled experiment," Elena decided. "Volunteer 337 in a stress scenario, with real-time blood monitoring and full spectral analysis of his cellular activity." "Selden will want to be there," Malik warned. "Let him," Elena replied. "It's time we showed some concrete results anyway. He's been pressing for progress reports daily." Later that afternoon, they assembled in the high-security testing chamber. Aaron Monroe sat calmly in a medical chair, electrodes attached to his temples and chest, an intravenous line in his arm connected to a real-time blood analysis system. "Comfortable, Mr. Monroe?" Elena asked. Aaron nodded, his expression serene despite the intimidating setup around him. "Fine, Dr. Voss. Just another day as a human guinea pig, right?" Elena had come to admire Aaron's equanimity. Despite being subjected to increasingly stressful experiments, he maintained a philosophical attitude about the whole process. "Today's test will be more intense than previous ones," she warned him. We'll be inducing a controlled fear response using virtual reality and mild electrical stimulation. Bring it on, Aaron replied with a small smile. For science, right? Victor Selden entered the chamber, accompanied by 2 board members in expensive suits, representatives from the Institute's corporate sponsors. Elena presumed. Their presence added an unwelcome pressure to the proceedings. Dr. Voss. Selden greeted her with barely contained excitement. I understand we're expecting a significant demonstration today. We're conducting a controlled experiment. Elena corrected carefully. To test our hypothesis about stress-induced element production. Excellent. Selden turned to the board members. Gentlemen, you're about to witness the future of energy production, perhaps even weaponry, being born. Elena exchanged a troubled glance with Malik. Weaponry had never been mentioned as an objective for Project Phaeton. We're ready to begin, Ariella announced from the monitoring station, either oblivious to or deliberately ignoring Selden's comment. Elena nodded. Proceed with Phase 1. The lights dimmed as Aaron's VR headset activated. His vital signs, displayed on monitors around the room, remained steady as the simulation began, a mild scenario designed to induce low-level anxiety. Baseline reading established, Malik reported. Phaeton 1 concentration at 0.012 parts per million. Proceed to Phase 2, Elena instructed. The simulation intensified. Aaron's heart rate increased slightly as the virtual scenario presented more threatening stimuli. Simultaneously, a mild electrical current was applied to his skin, not enough to be painful, but sufficient to trigger a physiological stress response. Concentration increasing, Malik announced. 0.0028 parts per million. Selden leaned forward, eyes gleaming. Excellent. Push to Phase 3. Elena hesitated. Phase 3 involved a significant escalation in the stress stimulus, one they hadn't fully tested. Director, I'm not sure. Proceed. Dr. Voss. Selden cut her off. Our guests have limited time. Reluctantly. Elena nodded to Ariella, who initiated the Phase 3 protocol immediately. Aaron's body tensed. His heart rate spiked dramatically as the VR simulation presented a life-threatening scenario, combined with stronger electrical stimulation. Phaeton 1 concentration spiking, Malik reported, his voice tense. 0.057, 0.063, 0.078 parts per million and still climbing. This is remarkable, one of the board members murmured. Elena watched Aaron's vitals with growing concern. His cortisol levels are dangerously high. We should stop. Continue, Selden commanded. We need to see the peak production level. Concentration at 0.094 parts per million, Malik reported. Director, Dr. Voss is right. We're approaching unsafe levels of... I said continue, Selden snapped. Aaron's body suddenly arched in the chair, a gasp escaping his lips. On the monitoring equipment, alarms began to sound as his cellular readings went haywire. Something's wrong, Ariella called out, frantically working her console. The element isn't just being produced. It's reacting with something else in his bloodstream. Elena rushed to Aaron's side, checking his vitals. His skin had taken on a silvery sheen, veins standing out in stark relief against his pale flesh. Shut it down now! Ariella terminated the simulation, but Aaron continued to convulse. The monitoring equipment showed his blood temperature rising rapidly, approaching levels that would denature proteins. He's going into some kind of chain reaction, Malik shouted, joining Elena at Aaron's side. The Phaeton 1 is destabilizing throughout his bloodstream. The radiation detectors in the room suddenly shrieked to life, red warning lights flashing across every screen. "Radiation spike!" Ariella yelled. "Beta and gamma radiation exceeding containment parameters." The board members backed toward the exit, panic evident on their faces. Selden remained frozen, staring at Aaron with a mixture of horror and fascination. "Get everyone out," Elena ordered. "Initiate containment protocols." As alarms blared throughout the facility, Elena made a split-second decision. Instead of following the evacuation order, she rushed to her workstation and began frantically synthesizing a compound she'd been developing, a protein-based agent designed to bind to Phaeton 1 and stabilize it. "Elena, what are you doing?" Malik shouted over the alarms. "We need to evacuate." "If we don't stop this reaction, it won't matter where we evacuate to," Elena replied, not looking up from her work. "The radiation will breach containment and keep spreading." Understanding dawned on Malik's face. "The chain reaction. It's not just in Aaron anymore, is it?" Elena shook her head grimly. "Phaeton 1 emissions are triggering production in everyone nearby. Look." She pointed to a monitor showing radiation signatures spreading throughout the lab like a viral contagion, jumping from person to person. "How is that possible?" Malik whispered. "I don't know. Quantum entanglement? Maybe. Ariella would have a theory." Elena's hands flew over the synthesizer controls. "But right now, I need to stop it before it goes critical." The synthesizer hummed as it produced a small vial of clear liquid, the culmination of weeks of theoretical work that Elena had never expected to test so soon. What is that?" Malik asked as Elena filled a syringe. "A biomolecular dampening agent. In theory, it should bind to Phaeton 1 and prevent quantum decay." She hesitated. "In theory. And if it doesn't work?" Elena met his gaze squarely. "Then we have about 12 minutes before this facility becomes a crater." She approached Aaron, whose convulsions had subsided into tremors. His skin now glowed with an unearthly silver light, and the air around him shimmered with radiation. "I need to inject this directly into his carotid artery," Elena explained, preparing the syringe. "The agent needs to reach his brain immediately to stop the cascade." "Chetus, that could kill him," Malik protested. "The alternative definitely will," Elena replied grimly. "Help me hold him steady." Together, they restrained Aaron's trembling form. Elena took a deep breath, found the pulsing artery in his neck, and plunged the needle in, depressing the plunger in one smooth motion. For a terrifying moment, nothing happened. Then Aaron's body went rigid, his back arching impossibly as the silvery glow beneath his skin intensified. A keening sound escaped his lips, not quite human, not quite of this world. "It's not working," Malik said, despair evident in his voice. "Give it time," Elena insisted, though her own hope was fading. She glanced at the radiation monitors. The levels continued to climb, approaching critical threshold. Then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the glow beneath Aaron's skin began to fade. The radiation readings plateaued, then gradually began to decrease. Aaron's body relaxed, his breathing becoming more regular. "It's working," Malik breathed, incredulous. "The reaction is stabilizing." Elena sagged with relief, the adrenaline that had been sustaining her suddenly dissipating. "Check the facility-wide readings. Is the cascade stopping everywhere?" Malik moved to a monitoring station. "Yes, radiation levels dropping across the board. Whatever you did, it worked." The door to the lab burst open as a hazmat team rushed in, led by a furious Victor Selden. "What the hell happened here?" he demanded. "You were supposed to evacuate, and what did you inject into the subject?" Elena stood her ground. What happened is exactly what I warned might happen. Phaeton 1 reached critical concentration and began a decay cascade. And what I injected was a stabilizing agent that just saved all our lives. Selden's expression shifted from anger to calculation. A stabilizing agent? You developed this without authorization. I developed it as a precautionary measure. Elena replied coldly, which proved necessary sooner than expected. This is significant. Selden turned to the board members, who had cautiously re-entered the lab. Gentlemen, as you can see, we've not only identified an unprecedented energy source, but also developed a means to control it. Elena stared at him in disbelief. Control it? We nearly had a disaster. This element is far too unstable for any practical application, especially anything involving weapons. That's not your decision to make, Dr. Voss. Selden replied smoothly. The Institute will determine the appropriate applications for this discovery. He turned to the hazmat team. Secure all research data and samples. Full containment protocols remain in effect. As the team moved to comply, Elena stepped forward. What about Aaron? He needs medical attention. Subject 337 will be moved to the medical wing for observation, Selden said dismissively. Now, I suggest you prepare a full report on this incident and on your stabilizing agent. The board will want complete details. After Selden and the board members departed, Elena turned to Malik and Ariella, who had remained quietly observing the exchange. This has gone too far, she said quietly. They're ignoring the dangers in pursuit of weapons applications. What can we do? Ariella asked. Selden controls everything, the research, the facility, even the data. Elena's expression hardened with resolve. Not all the data. I've been keeping independent records, and it's time we used them. That night, in Elena's apartment, the three scientists gathered around her dining table, poring over research notes and data files that Elena had secretly duplicated. If these readings are accurate, Ariella said, studying a chart, Phaeton 1 isn't just unstable, it's quantum entangled across all samples. A reaction in one location can trigger reactions in others, regardless of distance, which explains the cascade effect we saw in the lab. Malik nodded. But how is that possible? I have a theory, Elena said. What if Phaeton 1 isn't from our universe at all? What if it's bleeding through from another dimension, one where the laws of physics are different? Ariella looked skeptical. That's a massive leap. Is it? Elena pulled up a simulation on her tablet. Look at these quantum oscillation patterns. They don't match anything in our periodic table because they're vibrating at frequencies that shouldn't be possible in our space-time. So you're suggesting what? That human consciousness, under stress, somehow creates a bridge to this other dimension? Malik asked. Not creates, accesses, Elena clarified. What if consciousness itself operates partly outside our dimensional framework? What if, under extreme stress, the human mind reaches across dimensional boundaries? That would explain why the element appears exclusively in human blood under stress conditions. Ariella mused, warming to the theory. The mind-body connection becomes a dimensional gateway. And why it's unstable, Malik added. It's literally trying to exist in two incompatible realities simultaneously. Elena nodded. Which makes it incredibly dangerous. If Selden and his corporate backers try to weaponize this, they could trigger reactions that spread uncontrollably. So what do we do? Ariella asked. Elena's expression was grim. We go public, release all our findings, including the dangers, to the scientific community and the media. Once the information is out there, Selden can't control the narrative anymore. That's career suicide, Malik warned. not to mention a violation of about 50 confidentiality agreements we've all signed. Some things are more important than careers. Elena replied softly. We're talking about an element that could potentially trigger a chain reaction on a global scale if mishandled. After a long silence, Ariella nodded. The physics community needs to know about this. Proper safety protocols need to be established. I'll help, Malik agreed. But we need to be careful. Selden has powerful allies. We have something more powerful, Elena said. The truth. Over the next week, they worked in secret, compiling their findings into a comprehensive report. Elena also continued her official duties at the Institute, developing the stabilizing agent further while observing Aaron's recovery in the medical wing. The young man had stabilized, but something had changed in him. His perceptions seemed altered, his descriptions of the world around him sometimes veering into the metaphysical. I can see it now, Dr. Voss, he told Elena during one examination. The connections between everything. It's like the universe is one giant organism, and we're just cells within it. That's a common philosophical perspective, Elena replied gently, checking his vital signs. No, I can literally see it. Aaron's eyes took on that now familiar silvery sheen. Energy flowing between people, between objects, connections everywhere. Sometimes I can even see glimpses of somewhere else. Elena's scientific curiosity was piqued despite her concerns. Somewhere else? Can you describe it? Aaron's expression became distant. A place where light behaves like liquid and thought has physical form, where time moves sideways. He shook his head. I can't explain it properly. Human language doesn't have the right concepts. Elena documented these experiences carefully, adding them to the growing body of evidence that Phaeton 1 was far more than just an unusual element. It was a bridge between realities, with profound implications for human consciousness. Meanwhile, Selden pushed ahead with plans to expand the research. Elena discovered that he had scheduled a major demonstration for military officials, a weapons demonstration, using concentrated Phaeton 1 extracted from volunteer blood samples. This is insanity. She confronted him in his office. We barely understand this element. Using it as a weapon is criminally irresponsible. Your concerns are noted, Dr. Voss. Selden replied coldly. But the decision has been made. The demonstration proceeds in 3 days. Then I resign, Elena declared, effective immediately. Selden's smile was predatory. No, you don't. Your contract clearly states that any resignation requires a 6-month notice period during which you continue your duties. Additionally, all your research remains the property of the Institute. His voice hardened. You will participate in the demonstration, Dr. Voss, or face legal consequences that will destroy your career and financial future. Trapped. Elena returned to her lab, where Malik and Ariella waited anxiously. We need to accelerate our timeline, she told them. The demonstration is in 3 days. If they try to weaponize concentrated Phaeton 1, the cascade could spread worldwide. Ariella finished grimly. Human stress levels would spike globally, triggering more production, creating a feedback loop. We need to release our findings immediately, Malik urged. And we need evidence that can't be disputed. Elena added, which means we need to document the demonstration itself, show exactly what they're planning and why it's dangerous. They spent the next 2 days finalizing their report and planning how to document the demonstration without being caught. Elena also worked frantically to produce a larger batch of her stabilizing agent, a last resort if the demonstration went catastrophically wrong. The day of the demonstration arrived with a tense atmosphere pervading the institute. Military officials in dress uniforms mingled with corporate executives in the observation area above the testing chamber. Elena, Malik, and Ariella took their positions at the monitoring stations, exchanging subtle nods of confirmation. Their recording devices were active, capturing everything. Selden stood before the assembled dignitaries, practically glowing with pride and ambition. Ladies and gentlemen, what you are about to witness represents the dawn of a new era in energy production and national security, an element that exists beyond the standard model of physics, with applications limited only by our imagination. He gestured to a containment unit at the center of the chamber. Inside, a silver sphere about the size of a tennis ball pulsed with inner light, concentrated Phaeton 1, extracted from hundreds of blood samples and stabilized using Elena's agent. This small sample contains the energy equivalent of 50 tons of TNT. Selden announced, completely stable until activated, and leaving no radioactive residue after detonation. The perfect tactical weapon. Elena monitored the quantum readings with growing alarm. The concentrated element was far less stable than Selden claimed, its energy signature fluctuating wildly even in its supposedly dormant state. "Director," she called out, "the sample is showing signs of quantum instability. I recommend postponing the demonstration until—" "Continue as planned." Selden cut her off with a sharp gesture. Dr. Voss's concerns are noted but unnecessary. The containment field is more than adequate. He turned back to the observers. When triggered by a specific electromagnetic frequency, the element releases its energy in a controlled detonation. Observe. Selden nodded to a technician, who activated a control sequence. A focused EM pulse targeted the containment unit, designed to trigger the Phaeton 1 sample. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the silver sphere began to pulse more rapidly, its glow intensifying. Energy levels rising as expected. Selden narrated confidently. The reaction is controlled and contained. Elena watched in horror as the readings on her monitor spiked far beyond predicted levels. "The reaction is accelerating beyond parameters. Shut it down!" But it was too late. The silver sphere suddenly expanded, pressing against the containment field, which shimmered under the strain. Alarms blared as radiation levels spiked. Containment field at 87% capacity and falling. Ariella reported, her voice tight with tension. "At this rate, breach in 40 seconds. The military officials began backing toward the exits as Selden frantically ordered the technicians to reinforce the containment field. "Divert all power to the quantum buffers. We can still control this." "No, we can't," Elena said, making a decision. She grabbed her case containing the stabilizing agent and rushed toward the containment unit. "Dr. Voss, return to your station immediately," Selden shouted. Elena ignored him, reaching the containment unit and quickly assessing the situation. The field was failing. She could see the microscopic fractures forming in its structure as the Phaeton 1 reaction intensified. "Ariella, I need a targeted field breach," she called out, "just large enough for a syringe." "Are you insane?" Selden demanded. "A breach will release the energy." "If we do nothing, the entire field will collapse anyway." Elena shot back. "Ariella, now!" From her station, Ariella manipulated the containment field controls, creating a pinpoint opening. Elena didn't hesitate. She plunged a large syringe filled with her stabilizing agent through the opening, directly into the pulsing heart of the Phaeton 1 mass. For a terrifying moment, the reaction seemed to intensify, the silver light becoming blindingly bright. Then, gradually, the pulsing slowed. The light dimmed from blinding to merely intense, and the containment field stabilized. "Reaction stabilizing," Malik reported, relief evident in his voice. "Radiation levels dropping." Elena stepped back from the containment unit, her heart pounding. She turned to face the stunned observers, including Selden, whose face had gone pale with the realization of how close they'd come to disaster. "This," Elena announced loudly, "is why Phaeton 1 cannot be weaponized. It is not just unstable, it's unpredictable in ways that defy our understanding of physics." Today's incident was minor compared to what could happen with a larger sample. "This demonstration is over," one of the military officials declared. "Director Selden, we'll need a full explanation of what just happened here." As the room erupted in chaos, Elena nodded subtly to Malik and Ariella. It was time for the next phase of their plan. That evening, as Selden was occupied with damage control, Elena accessed the Institute's main database. Using administrative credentials she'd obtained through careful observation, she uploaded their complete report on Phaeton 1, including all safety concerns and ethical implications, to the Institute's public research portal. Simultaneously, Malik and Ariella sent copies to key scientific journals, regulatory agencies, and selected journalists known for their integrity. By morning, the story had exploded across global media. Dangerous new element discovered in human blood and military weapons program. Using human subjects dominated headlines worldwide. The scientific community was in an uproar, demanding transparent research protocols and ethical oversight. Elena, Malik, and Ariella were summoned to an emergency board meeting, where a furious Selden awaited. "You've destroyed everything," he seethed. "Years of research, billions in potential funding, all gone because you couldn't follow orders." "We prevented a global catastrophe," Elena replied calmly, "and potentially saved the scientific reputation of this institute." "You're all fired," Selden spat, "and you'll be facing lawsuits for the rest of your lives for violating your confidentiality agreements." "I don't think so," interjected a board member that Elena recognized as the Institute's legal counsel. "The whistleblower protections in this case are quite clear, especially given the public safety implications." She slid a tablet across the table to Selden. "Furthermore, the board has voted. You're being placed on administrative leave pending a full investigation." Selden stared at the tablet in disbelief. "This is absurd. The potential applications are not worth the risks." The board member cut him off. "And your judgment in pursuing weapons applications without proper safety protocols has placed the Institute in a legally precarious position." Over the following months, the scientific world grappled with the implications of Phaeton 1. International conferences were convened, research protocols established, and strict ethical guidelines developed for any study involving the element. Elena, far from being ostracized for her whistleblowing, found herself lauded as a voice of scientific responsibility. She, Malik, and Ariella were invited to lead a new, transparent research initiative focused not on weaponization, but on understanding the fundamental nature of Phaeton 1 and its implications for physics, medicine, and human consciousness. Their first priority was caring for the volunteers who had shown positive for the element, particularly Aaron Monroe, whose perceptual changes had stabilized into what he described as glimpses beyond the veil of ordinary reality. These individuals became not test subjects, but research partners, their experiences providing valuable insights into the element's effects on consciousness. Elena's stabilizing agent was refined into a treatment protocol that could prevent dangerous Phaeton 1 cascades, ensuring the safety of both researchers and the general public. Her paper proposing ethical safeguards became the foundation for an international treaty regulating research on human-derived isotopes. 1 year after the fateful demonstration, Elena stood on the balcony of a new research facility built specifically for Phaeton studies. The sunrise painted the Geneva landscape in gold and crimson, a fitting metaphor for the dawn of a new scientific era. Malik joined her, offering a cup of coffee. "Contemplating our place in the universe again?" he asked with a gentle smile. Elena nodded. "I've been thinking about what Aaron said, about everything being connected. Phaeton 1 seems to exist at the intersection of mind and matter, consciousness and quantum reality. It challenges everything we thought we knew about the universe and our place in it." "Some would call that terrifying," Malik observed. "I call it wondrous." Elena replied, "Terrifying too. Yes, but that's the nature of true discovery. It's not just finding something new. It's finding something that changes how you see everything else." She gazed out at the sunrise, feeling both humbled and exhilarated by the journey that had brought her here. The most unstable element in the universe, found in human blood. A discovery that had nearly led to destruction, but now opened pathways to understanding the deepest mysteries of existence. "We stand on the threshold between discovery and destruction," she murmured. "And it's up to us to choose which path humanity will take." Malik nodded, understanding in his eyes. "Then we'd better choose wisely." Elena smiled, raising her coffee cup in a toast. "To choosing wisely, and to the journey ahead, whatever wonders and perils it may hold." As the sun climbed higher, casting its light across the research facility, where scientists from around the world now worked together to unravel the mysteries of Phaeton 1, Elena felt a profound sense of purpose. The element in her blood, in all human blood, was more than just a scientific curiosity or potential weapon. It was a reminder of humanity's unique place in the cosmos, beings of matter capable of transcending material limitations, creatures of this universe with connections to realms beyond. The most unstable element in the universe had turned out to be the most profound mirror of humanity itself, poised eternally between creation and destruction, between the known and the unknowable, between the mundane and the infinite. And in that precarious balance lay both humanity's greatest peril and its greatest promise.